It's time for another Found Footage 101, where I check out some new found footage horror films and question their level of authenticity. Why? Because 9 times out of 10, I feel in order for a found footage film to be successful, it must look, feel, and sound authentic, meaning that the less production touching these films, the better. It's bare bones filmmaking, and some may think that means lower tier, easy cash grabs, but some of the most terrifying films I've seen have been shot from the first person point of view. Let's take a look at 4 recently released found footagers and sort through the good and the bad of it all. The Decedent is new streaming on Tubi. It's directed and written by Andrew Bowser. Bella, played by Zoe Graham, is a young mortician faced with a job of reconstructing the face of a recently deceased serial killer and confronts supernatural forces that may have something to do with the murderer's rampage. Are the actors successfully acting like they aren't acting? The Decedent is basically carried by the lead, played by Zoe Graham, who is a likable and interesting protagonist to follow as she videotapes the steps in the reconstruction process for tutorials. Not only did the tutorial sessions offer up a likable side to Bella, but it felt as if I were learning something interesting as well. The only other performance that stands out is that of Andrew Bowser as the maintenance guy. This actor, who's known for his YouTube Arby's reports and Onyx the Fortuitous and Talisman of Souls movie, kind of grinds my nerves, and I find the guy hard to watch. I'm sure he's a good dude, but his nervously awkward humor just doesn't work for me. Still, Bowser is much more restrained and tolerable in The Decedent. Does the footage found seem authentic and untouched by additional production? The most frustrating thing about The Decedent is that the filmmakers foolishly decide to add jump scare piano punches and additional music leading up to frightening moments. It doesn't need it, as the scenes are suspenseful enough, but for some reason, music is used and it really knocks the knees out of some of these tense scenes, especially the ones that end in jump scares, as without them, I think they would have scared me all the more. The film also flips between security cameras, handheld cameras, and even a body cam worn on Bella's head and a police officer without addressing why all of this editing occurred. This chips away at this film, convincing the viewer that this is footage found. A simple blurb at the beginning might have explained all of this. Instead, at the beginning, we get a commercial for the funeral home, which I must admit is a nice way to introduce the characters and the setting. Why don't they just drop the camera and get the hell out of there? Most of the footage comes from a compilation of security footage set up around the funeral home. There are some instances where Bella is utilizing a video camera she uses for her tutorials. She really has no reason to be filming other than the fact that, without doing so, chunks of the story wouldn't be caught on camera. Bella says she always forgets to turn the camera off, but I wish a bit more work was put into addressing this issue. Is there an up-nosed Blair Witch confessional or a wreck drag away from the camera? Not a one, and the film is better without these tired cliches. Does anything actually happen? Is the lead-in too long and the payoff too short? The Decedent makes sure to pepper in spooky and strange moments all the way through its runtime. From the morbid setting, to the arrival of the body, to the reconstruction of the killer's face, to the increasing paranormal activity, this is a film that keeps the momentum running from beginning to end. Does the film add anything to the subgenre, and is it worth watching? Even though The Decedent may not pass the authenticity test, as it uses multiple angles, media, and most importantly, uses an outside soundtrack to punctuate scenes and build suspense, this is one of those rare instances that the original story and narrative twists trump all of that. It's a fun little film, reminiscent of the recent horror game adaptation of The Mortuary Assistant, as it deals with a lot of the same possession and paranormal tropes. But I think The Decedent deals with this same topic in a more effective and simpler way. With a fraction of the budget, filmmaker Andrew Bowser delivers some solid scares and a unique story. But man, I think it would have been infinitely more effective had they just trusted the scares caught on camera without fiddling with it all by adding music. BODYCAM is new streaming on Shudder. It's directed by Brandon Christensen and written by Brandon Christensen and Ryan Christensen. A pair of officers go on a routine wellness check that results in the actual deaths of an incoherent man and a baby. The baby was incoherent as well, but I guess all babies are, aren't they? Choosing to cover up the deaths instead of reporting them, the police officers find themselves trapped in an unfamiliar neighborhood with the residents acting in some kind of zombie-like manner. It seems at the heart of it all is a powerful entity that won't let them get out of this maze of streets alive. Are the actors successfully acting like they aren't acting? Across the board, this is a decently acted film, both actors playing the police officers, Officer Jackson, played by Jamie M. Calica, and Officer Bryce, played by Grave Encounters' Sean Rogerson, spout the lingo and, for the most part, seem like real cops. Now, the fact that Bryce leaps to a cover-up so quickly feels a bit forced, as he didn't know the guy he shot was holding a baby and the man was charging towards him at the time. So most likely, this is not one of those cases where the cop's over-aggression is in question. Still, I get it that the cover-up aspect is needed for the rest of the film to go down, so I'm willing to turn a blind eye to it, and Rogerson and Calica sell it that this is a rash decision made in the middle of a chaotic situation. Does the footage found seem authentic and untouched by additional production? As the title says, mostly everything in this film comes from the officer's body cam. There is an edit back and forth between the body cameras on the two cops, but in an investigation, to make sense of what's been going on, it's understandable that the two cameras would be spliced together. There's a tagline at the beginning saying that edits were made to this footage. There are also no annoying musical intrusions. Everything we hear are sounds that are captured solely by the camera. Why don't they just drop the camera and get the hell out of there? Well, the officers are ordered to wear these body cams, so they can't just toss them away. There is an early attempt to tamper with the cameras, but once the underground tech gal hears what this is all about, she doesn't want anything to do with it. For some reason, after that, the cop puts the camera back on and continues to record, which may have been done out of habit, but still feels like a bit of a reach to have him put the camera on again after he has implicated himself by discussing a cover-up on camera. This is more of a plot hole in the movie than a reason for him to keep the camera running. Is there an up-nosed Blair Witch confessional or a wrecked drag-away from the camera? Yep, there's a couple of drag-aways and at least one or maybe two confessionals. I don't know why found footage films still do this. I guess it shows that the filmmakers didn't do their due diligence and actually watched some found footagers like fans like us have for the last 20-some years, so that they would know how tired of cliché these scenes really are. Does anything happen? Is the lead-in too long and payoff too short? The pace is consistent and fast for most of the film. The two police officers are on the run pretty much from the get-go when they stop to do the wellness check. The film tries to keep throwing things at the viewer to keep the interest there, and it might work for some viewers, but, well, let me get into that in the next question. Does the film add anything to the subgenre, and is it worth watching? After the credits began to roll, I immediately felt this film was originally intended to be a segment for a VHS anthology film, and with all honesty, I think that would have been a better place for this story. I was riveted to the screen for the first 15 to 20 minutes, but after that, the story just kind of spins its wheels until the over-the-top ending. Sure, the action continues to be in your face and some jump scares work, but it seems like the film is trying to walk the tightrope between being sympathetic to cops, which is definitely not a popular opinion in film these days, and condemning them, which we see a whole lot more of. It also seems to want to say something about the forgotten neighborhoods where no one wants to help or protect the innocents who live there. Because of that, there is a theme of community rising up and defending itself. These are powerful ideas that might have been interesting, but the film really loses steam when it tries to go into some kind of lore about cults, demons, and Lovecraftian monstrosities. Basically, what I'm saying is that a lot of padding was required to make BODYCAM into a full-length film, and that was to this story's detriment. This is one of those instances where the film looks and feels authentic, it just lacks the strength in the story department. Still, there's a heavily edited version of BODYCAM that would have made for one hell of a VHS segment. Next, we have In Our Blood. It's available on demand from Utopia. It's directed by Pedro Kos and written by Stephen Klein, Aaron Kogan, and Clay Tweel. A young filmmaker named Emily, played by Brittany O'Grady, seeks answers and to check up on her estranged mother Sam, played by Alana Ubach, who is a recovering addict. With her cameraman, Danny, played by E.J. Bonilla, in tow, Emily makes the trip from Los Angeles to New Mexico, hoping to make this reunion into some kind of documentary. But after an emotional reunion, Emily and Danny find that Sam disappears the very next day. In fear of a relapse, the filmmaking pair try to figure out where Sam is and if she's even still alive by going to a facility where Sam is employed at. What they find there is quite shocking. Are the actors successfully acting like they aren't acting? The acting is solid and believable. Both leads make comfortable banter between one another that feels very real, like they have been friends for quite a while. The background characters seem to be real homeless people, and again, do well with what they're given. All in all, everything feels authentic and unscripted. Does the footage found seem authentic and untouched by additional production? There's a leap at the very end that is outside of what we would call found footage. Other than that, everything seems to be coming from the same handheld camera with very little edits. There are a few beats where some background noise is amplified that might have been added in post-production, but if it did, the added music wasn't invasive. It all feels like raw footage. Is there an up-nosed Blair Witch confessional or a wreck drag-away from the camera? There is a confessional of sorts, giving a bit of context in the final act. This occurs at the beginning, and then the scene is repeated in context at the end. It wasn't obnoxious, given what transpires. I'm being intentionally vague to respect spoilers, and this film has a lot of them. Why don't they just drop the camera and get the hell out of there? The point of the film is that Emily is making a documentary about reconnecting with her mom, so the camera isn't dropped for the sake of catching everything on film. When the camera is finally dropped during the climax, it's picked up by someone else, so again, everything feels unforced. Does anything actually happen? Is the lead-in too long and the payoff too short? Quite a bit of story is told in this film. The story of reconnecting with Emily's mom is compelling, mainly because the acting of the leads and the genuine look of the inner workings of this treatment center caring for those homeless and addictive souls are so convincing. There is a mystery unfolding as Sam disappears halfway through and the search for her becomes the priority. This mystery unfolds in a way that doesn't feel like a moment of filler. Does the film add anything to the subgenre, and is it worth watching? It's one thing that the film feels authentic, but that's only half the battle to be a good movie. It also has to bring something new to the table, or at least do something right. In Your Blood does a whole lot right. Mainly, it tells a compelling story that unfolds meticulously, leading the viewer along with small revelations that leads to a whopper of a surprise at the end. The movie might annoy those who need to know exactly what type of subgenre this film sits in right away, but if you let this one take you, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by the big finale. It made me want to rewatch and study the clues dropped throughout the story, which made the reveal obvious, but it covered its tracks with solid storytelling and engrossing performances. I highly recommend In Your Blood, especially for those who think the found footage subgenre is stale. This one proves the naysayers wrong. Hunting Matthew Nichols is in theaters on Friday from Dropshock Pictures and Moon7. It's directed by Markian Tarasiuk and written by Markian Tarasiuk and Sean Harris Oliver. After two teens, Matthew Nichols and Jordan Reimer, disappear without a trace in the deep woods of Port Rupert, Vancouver Island. That's Canada, folks. 20 years later, Matthew's sister, Tara, played by Miranda McDougall, a documentary filmmaker, Markian, played by actual writer and director Markian Tarasiuk, and cameraman Ryan, played by real cameraman Ryan Alexander McDonald, head back to Canada to seek out answers on this missing persons cold case. Their investigation brings them into contact with the law enforcement involved with the initial case, as well as experts on local mythology from the indigenous people of the land, and finally leading them to a cabin in the woods where the teenager's camera was found. Are the actors successfully acting like they aren't acting? Miranda McDougall, who plays Tara, does a convincing job as a sister obsessed with finding out more information about her missing brother. This is a role that could have lost steam, as Tara plays her role with an intensity for knowledge from the very second we see her on screen all the way until the end. Still, she's likable, relatable, and most importantly believable as a non-actor, which is what you're looking for in a found footage film. The rest of the cast is solid too, with the older generation being stilted and uncomfortable in front of the camera. Tarasiuk and McDonald are basically playing themselves and feel natural as well. Does the footage found seem authentic and untouched by additional production? This film is made in a mockumentary format, as if this is an actual documentary put together by a production team. So there is additional music added to the film as if it were a real true crime documentary. That said, there's also music added to the scenes that are supposed to feel more immediate, like actual found footage, specifically during the final moments as Tara and director Markian head into the woods where her brother went missing with a last sliver of hope and two cameras. I understand that since the film was punctuated and elevated by musical cues all the way throughout, it makes the film consistent, but because this section is supposed to be much more like found footage rather than produced material, the use of musical cues in these scenes undercuts the authenticity of it all. I know these scenes would have hit harder had they simply played the footage untouched by musical production. Is there an up-nosed Blair Witch confessional or a wreck drag-away from the camera? The two boys who went missing were obsessed with the Blair Witch Project, so there are bound to be comparisons between this film and the classic found footager. There is a scene where the two boys do the up-nosed confessional, but this is more of a joke. Later, there is a confessional that is dead-ass serious, which really feels dated and unnecessary. The film also does a wreck-style drag-away, which is another trope that has become extremely tired as it's been repeated ad nauseum for many a lo-fi found footager for going on 25 years now, and just makes me roll my eyes every time I see it in a new movie. Why don't they just drop the camera and get the hell out of there? Since the team is making a documentary, they are committed to capturing as much as possible. Still, once shit finally goes down in the final moments, the camera is dropped numerous times as the paranormal stuff begins to occur, so it does feel realistic. Does anything actually happen? Is the lead-in too long and the payoff too short? This is what some might call a slow burner. I would call Hunting Matthew Nichols a cross between the Blair Witch Project and Lake Mungo. The bulk of the film is an investigation for Tara to find some kind of closure with the disappearance of her brother. There are interviews, behind-the-scenes shots of the investigators sifting through evidence, backstories of the two missing kids, and a minute-by-minute breakdown of the night leading up to their disappearance. It all plays out like a real-deal documentary one might catch on Netflix. It also captures a lot of the ominous aura that was displayed so well in one of my favorite mockumentaries, Lake Mungo. As the mystery deepens, the further this investigation goes. I was enthralled with this mystery and invested in Tara getting the answers that she was looking for. But I know some might not have the patience I had with Hunting Matthew Nichols. This is not a scare-a-minute movie, but an investigation led by a very obsessed person, and a lot of modern horror fans might not be into that. Once we get into the woods, in the last leg of the film, things pick up quite fast, and it really does have a lot of those Blair Witch sensations. Simply mentioning that will push a lot of people away from this movie, but it has to be said. Does this film add anything to the subgenre, and is it worth watching? If you don't like the Blair Witch Project, it's doubtful you're going to like Hunting Matthew Nichols. Full stop. Still, I found the whole thing to be an intriguing homage to two of my favorite examples of found footage, Lake Mungo and the Blair Witch Project. One does wonder why, after viewing a videotape of what happened to her missing brother and his friend in the woods, Tara would attempt to do the same kind of ritual and expect different results, but one might also argue that Tara was too far gone into her own obsession to know any better. The final moments are quite shocking, and while similar to Blair Witch, it goes into its own different direction. It feels as if the filmmaker's intention of homage might have come from a place where they simply haven't seen the innumerable amount of found footagers as you and I have through the years, and they might think they're paying homage and hoping to drum up some nostalgia feels. That said, much of Hunting Matthew Nichols worked for me as it felt legit most of the time and had some wonderfully macabre and woodsy horrific moments. Hunting Matthew Nichols doesn't tread any new paths for found footage, but it does it well by taking the whole thing extremely seriously and producing a powerful mockumentary. Well, those are 4 recent found footage horrors. Have you seen any of these? Are you gonna go find them for yourselves? Let me know down in the comments. Please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're